Harley boys. Not the Hardy boys, the Harley boys. Oh, hello friends, Coach Bob with you today, and today we're going to be talking about how far is too far, man. I've gotten a ton of emails. You know, it's funny, touring season is coming up, and folks are getting all their stuff ready. They're planning their trips and all that jazz. Turn my music down here. I got a little Jerry Rafferty going for those who are familiar. Anyway, they're asking me, you know, how far is too far? You know, what do you think I'm capable of? Make sure the camera's running. It looks like it is. But they're asking me questions like, how far is too far? And you know, you've done it, Coach. You've done the big trips, and we have, you know. For anybody that's new here, if you're wondering, you know, hey man, that guy's just talking, he don't know what he's talking about. We've done East Coast to West Coast, you know, Atlantic Ocean to Pacific Ocean. We dipped our toe in the water on both sides of this great continent. We went all the way across the United States, north to south, at its longest point from Key West all the way to the tip of Maine, mile marker 0 in Key West, to mile marker 1 in Fort Kent, Maine, and it was a spectacular trip. If you hadn't seen those, make sure you check them out. They're on playlists on the channel. But so how far is too far? And that's a kind of a complicated question. It sounds simple enough. Okay, too far is 1,000 miles is too far. Nah, 1,000 miles isn't too far, and 500 miles isn't too far, and 200 miles isn't too far. You know, I guess the real question is, where are you? That may sound like answering a question with a question. I hate it when people do that. But if you're wanting to do long miles, and when I say long miles, I'm not talking about a one-day trip where you go to a motel and it's 600 miles down the road and you're just going to hang out for a few days. You know, I think that most people could do that. You may be trashed for the next few days if you're not in shape, if you're not in riding shape. Now, obviously, you see motorcycle riders who, we'll just say they don't look athletic. We'll just leave it at that. And those guys are doing big miles, right? So how do they do it? If they're not in great physical condition, then how are they putting in so doggone many miles? Now, I'm going to answer that with an I don't know, because I can tell you that I take very good care of myself, or at least as good a care of myself as a guy can. And I think that physically the ride is not that difficult. So I can't speak for someone who is not, you know, an athlete, or not going out there and working out and doing that sort of stuff. So, you know, you can ring down in the oh, cool car. You can buzz down below, leave a comment on, you know, hey, what do you know, if you're not in peak physical condition and what it feels like physically to ride. But the physical side is very real. So I would say that the first thing you need to do before you start determining what you're going to do is try to get in a modicum of fitness. You know, just, you don't have to be running marathons, but you ought to be able to walk for an hour, or walk for a half an hour, or in Coach Vic's case, you know, push a wheelchair for an hour to a half an hour. But to be able to do something physical for an hour or two, I think that's really the only level of fitness you need to ride a motorcycle for long periods of time. I think that the greater fitness level you have, the further you're going to be able to go. So what is the big hurdle, and what makes the distance hard? And I'm going to say that I think a good distance, an easy distance, I'm going to even go further, I'm going to say an easy distance if you're on roads, main roads. Now if you're doing like the TAT, that's the Trans-America Trail, where you're riding dirt roads and trails, it's a different beast. You may only do 120 miles that day, because if you can only do 10 miles an hour, that's a 12-hour day. So you have to look at things sometimes in hours, not in miles. But if you're traveling on reasonable roads where you can do 60 miles an hour, or average 60 miles an hour, 50 to 60 miles an hour, 400 miles to me is the sweet spot. I'm going to say 400 is easy. You know, I know there are those who would say, man, that's a long way. But if you break it up, if you do 100 miles, top off your tank, both the motorcycle and you, do another 100, have a mild lunch or a brunch if you leave early like me. Do another 100 and another 100. I mean, you're there. And honestly, if you're like me and you leave early, you're there before you can check into the hotel. You just are. So 400 miles is the sweet spot. If I could do 400 miles a day, every day, I would have plenty of time in the evening to go out and run about and hang out and eat, drink, and be merry, and get plenty of rest and get up the next morning and do it again. I believe that the distance of 400 miles a day would not be a problem. Now, could it be if it was pouring down rain and freezing cold or 120 degrees outside? Those days are going to be hard. That's why you get on the road early in the heat and you wait till it warms up in the cold. That's just all, you have to work around that stuff because you are out in the elements. So I'm going to say that 400 miles a day is not a bad challenge, and that's, I don't think that if you can keep it together here in the old brain, 400's easy. If you were to ask me challenging, if you're gonna do big miles, and what do I consider big miles? I'd say 550 to 600 miles a day. Those are big miles. Now, Coach Vic, with her and I on here, the longest day we've done is 640 miles together. I've done like an 870 mile day by myself. The 870 mile day was fraught with problems too. I could have easily done 1,000 miles that day, but I had an issue on a bridge where there was a big traffic jam and then a big thunderstorm that delayed me. So the day was long because of it, but I could have easily done 1,000 miles. It just really wasn't that big of a challenge to me. I'm not trying to sound like I'm a bat or nothing, because I'm not. But distances, at least on the Spyder, are dramatically different than what these guys are riding ahead of me. Now, these guys ahead of me, they're on Harleys. And although Harleys may look really comfortable, I can tell you, I've ridden them. It's a different kind of comfort than this is. I won't say they're uncomfortable, but it's a different kind of comfort. It requires a different kind of focus as far as your balance and that sort of stuff. So I don't know, for the average guy, what it would be like on a Harley to do a 600 mile day. I've got friends that do it, and they're not super athletic guys, and they're, in their 50s and 60s. They have no problem doing it. So going the long haul, what do you think you can do? Like I said, comment down below. But when we do a 600 mile day, we start early, and this is how our day always breaks up. And for any of those who have watched us travel, you'll know our rhythm. We really put it way out there so you can see it. We'll do 150 miles or as close to that as we can. If it's 180 or 140, well, we're okay with that. But we really try to shoot for that 150 mark. So you're a little over 2 hours on the machine if you're going the speeds we go. I normally have my cruise set on 68 miles an hour. That gives me the optimal gas mileage. And in areas that we travel, sometimes, gas stations are few and far between. If you're in the wilderness in Maine, or you're out in West Texas or parts of Arizona where there's just nothing for miles, you really do have to be careful with that, because you may not have services for 80 miles, 100 miles, and if you miss your exit, you're in trouble. You're in trouble. So I really do watch my mileage. I'm careful about that. I don't really get in a hurry. So we'll do about 2 hours and 10 minutes, whatever, and then we'll take a break. And then we'll do that again, and then that second break is a little bit longer. We'll get off the bike and, have a Coke or eat a little bit, that sort of thing. Then we ride another couple hours, take a break, and then we ride another couple hours, and then we're where we're going. Now, if you're making these things 2 hours and 20 minutes, we'll say, doesn't take much mathematical genius to figure out that's over 9 hours in a day on a motorcycle. It's a long time. So the physical side of it, It can be very real, but the mental side of it, I think, is the bigger thing. I really do. So 600 miles on a Spyder, not too shabby. I think that most folks can do that if they are in riding shape. And if they're not, it's okay. Look, there's nothing wrong with doing 300-mile days. And if you do a 300-mile day, you're talking 75 miles a break, 75 miles a break, 75 miles a break, 75 miles, you're there. It's very, very easy. 300 miles, I'm telling you, you're there by lunchtime if you're getting up like we do. If you're wanting to do the 500 and 600 mile days, my greatest advice to you is to be physically fit and start early. Those are my two biggest things. Of course, make sure your machine is tuned up and properly, you know, cared for your journey. But the idea of just being able to get out and do 600 miles, if you're not a rider and you haven't done anything like that, if you're a little longer in the tooth, 600 miles is going to be quite a challenge for you. It just is, you know. I think you can do it. I think you can work your way up to it. If you're doing a 2-week, 3-week trip, you know, I know people who they'll do 3 days and a day off, 4 days and a day off. I don't like doing that. I'll just be honest with you. I like to ride pretty much every day. To me, when I leave the house to tour, even if it's a 5,000-6,000 mile tour, I want to ride. That's why I'm going. So to me, the vacation, the downtime is the ride. Well, I want you to do me a favor, if you would, like this video, give it a thumbs up, all that stuff. I would appreciate it. But I'm going to tell you a quick story about the miles, the long miles, and that Coach Vic and I experienced. You know, the first day when we were leaving for California, we were super excited, and so we had a lot of that pre-trip energy. You know, if you've ever had that pre-trip energy, you feel unstoppable, you feel bulletproof, you know. So our first stop, we ended up hitting rain early, so we had to stop a little prematurely. And then we ended up going, you know, we were at our lunch stop way ahead of schedule. And then things started changing, and not so much for us, they started changing in the sense of traffic. Traffic was slowing us down. It seemed like every time we came through a big town, the interstate was a parking lot. I guess this guy's taking his half in the middle, huh? You gotta love it. They make you nervous when they do that, don't they? So that initial energy that we had was wonderful, and it carried us quite a way down the road. But by the end of the day, even on day one, and we had been training, so to speak. You know, we were doing trips every week, 200-300 mile trip every week, where we would go get something, and I'd say, do you think you could do that twice? Do you think you could do that 3 times? And she was like, absolutely, yeah, I could do that 3 times. That's what you need to do. You need to go, don't deceive yourself. If you can't go out and do 200 miles easy in your backyard, 600 miles is gonna suck. It's just gonna suck, and there ain't no way around it. I don't care how beautiful the scenery is, you're gonna hate it. Don't do that to yourself. Make sure that you are ready to ride, because if you're not, man, it's gonna be miserable, and it can jade you towards riding. I've had friends who have gone on a tour and they came back and they're like, I'm never riding again, I'm selling my motorcycle. I mean, they were just miserable. The rain, the cold, the hot, the miles, the drivers. You know, you really got to want to do this. And that's another facet of it. You just have to really want to do it. Well, I hope you're enjoying your ride. I hope you're making way, you know, doing your thing, preparing for your trip. We're going to be doing some different videos on actual planning for the trip, but I got this question so many times, and it's one that there's really not a jam up and jelly tight answer where you just go 400 miles, 500 miles. How far is too far? I could tell you for me, too far with Coach Vic, 650 miles is too far. 640 is probably our limit. That was hard. That was a hard day. It was hot. But I think we could do 600 miles. I think we could do probably 5 of those in a row. She might disagree with me, but for me, I certainly could. Well, I hope you're out there putting in the big miles and going to all the cool places, the mountains and the lakes and the rivers and the streams and all that stuff, and that life is treating you absolutely magnificently as it should be. All right, well, I hope you got a little something out of that. So do me a favor, go out, buy the motorcycle of your dreams. You eat right, take care of yourself, and remember, if you're not having fun, you are definitely doing it wrong. I'll see you on the road real soon, hopefully on one of them 600 plus mile days.